All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to the Nobody Studio Inside Culture live stream. My name is Sejal Thakkar and I'm the Chief Culture Officer at Nobody Studios. And so today I'm looking forward to this conversation because we're talking about one of my favorite topics, cultural diversity. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And it's something that, I think all of us that are watching this right now can know that the business case for wanting to have cultural diversity in your organization was made years ago. This is nothing new. We know there's tons of benefits to the bottom line. We know that it increases the ability to solve problems. It increases the productivity. We know that it leads to out-of-the-box thinking and innovative ideas like we're trying to do at Nobody Studios. But the thing that we don't talk about often is what I want to really focus in on today, is that we can only enjoy all those benefits if we proactively identify and put into place some strategies to talk about the challenges that come along with having cultural diversity in your organization. So today, my guest, I'm so honored and humbled that we have Ray Leonard Jr. joining us today. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to tackle the question of how do we tackle the complex challenges of cultural diversity in our studio. So welcome to the show, Ray.
Thank you, Sejal. So happy to be here. Looking forward to this conversation. It's an important one, so I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Ray Leonard Jr. I actually got to meet him finally in person. We've seen each other almost every week for the last 2 years. But afterwards, I finally got to meet him at the GridCon conference a couple of weekends ago, and it was incredible. Ray, you totally lived up to all of my expectations. I knew you were going to be incredible, but even better in person. And so let me tell you a little bit more about Ray. He is a recognized public speaker. He's an award-winning business executive, and he has this podcast, which if you haven't checked it out, you need to listen to it, watch it, Know Better, Do Better. And it really comes from, what he learned, what was instilled into him by his grandfather, which is his core value now, know better, do better. And he brings this belief into everything he does, from coaching to public speaking to running businesses. And hopefully he's going to bring a lot of that to the studio because that's a core value that resonates with me as well. He actually also is a founder of one of the first companies that was created in our studio, Ovationz, which is a global platform where you can book top-notch talent like Ray. I'm on there, several other speakers that are really more focused on entertaining diverse audiences. And so this was one of the first companies created in our studio. It's ovationz.com. Take a look. And we're always looking for more talent. So go on there and sign up if you want to be one of our featured talents on there. But Ray, I just wanted, I love asking this question to everybody that comes to the show is, what inspired you to join Nobody Studios? And maybe if there was a key turning point that has gotten you to where you are today, if you could share that with us.
I love the intro, by the way. Thank you for that. I'm blushing over here. So I appreciate it. Thank you. So my journey in joining the studio was I was introduced to Mark by another business associate of mine. And it was, I guess, right during the pandemic. Right, during that time when everybody was trying to figure out what was going on and how they were going to move forward. I did some soul searching in my career, in my life. I've been speaking all over the world. I've had my biggest year set during the pandemic to speak. I had about 60-page speeches set up during that time, and all of a sudden everything stopped. So it gave the time to rethink and kind of gather your thoughts of where you wanted to go and what was going to be the next big thing. And for me, it was always been about creating my own legacy, creating opportunity for others and leaving something behind that mattered. And so when I started to hear, a little bit about the studio, the dreams and aspirations, it just resonated with me because for years, I never had the opportunity to get involved in the venture capital world or venture studio world, because it wasn't that diverse. And so the studio gives everybody an opportunity to be somebody. So that's one of the major reasons I got involved, to be able to leave a legacy behind and build something that's going to last for eternity.
Yeah, no, and I talked to, I was talking to Min a couple of days ago, and it's the same story that all of us share is this is sort of our last big thing. This is what we want our legacy to be. And I'm with you on that, and so, having been here now for a couple of years and get to know the leadership team, from your perspective, Ray, what do you think that makes Nobody Studios unique? And I would love to hear it from a cultural perspective. What is it about this culture that we're saying we want? I mean, Dr. Eric said this to me when I interviewed him a few weeks ago. He's like, I want to be that studio where people are knocking on our doors because they want to join our journey. So from your perspective, what makes us unique as a company?
What makes us unique is having culture at the front, especially when you talk about a startup company, a company that's just building, and to have that as one of your driving factors to make sure that you're a diverse company, that not just the diversity of people, but also diversity of thought. So I think that is one of the biggest things that drives it forward. And to see, like you and myself and Dr. Eric, all the men, all the people that are involved, not just from different backgrounds or races, but also different cultures from all over the world. The fact that we're a global company already is amazing to see. So we get people from from Barrier and Ireland, all different kinds of backgrounds that you see. So that's the amazing thing to start off with that. And I think that's one of the biggest things in the drivers for us that's going to make us successful is that we have diversity of culture. And you're leading that path, to make sure that everything that we do is addressed and fair and equitable.
Yeah, and I remember when I first joined the studio and I started attending our leadership team meetings. I was nervous, right, to step into this role because I know how important culture is to our chief nobody, Mark McNally, and I know that these were big shoes to fill. What I love is that yes, I have that title, but it really is all hands on deck. I mean, every single one of our leadership team members understands that we have to do this right because that's the only way we're going to build 100 companies in 5 years. If we can't get this right, it's not going to matter, right? So let's get a little bit deeper into this conversation because one of our core values is that we are going to be irrationally global, right? And so that's why this conversation is so important because I say this all the time, right? Like our journey isn't going to be right for everybody.
Right.
Because if you're going to come into the studio, you have to know that you are going to be working with people from all over that are going to be of all different religions, not just your sort of representational diversity, but your cognitive diversity, your neurodiversity. So you have to come into it being very comfortable with that. And then also know that you're not going to know everything about every culture. So you're going to have to be culturally aware. So can you talk a little bit about, as a leader at Nobody Studios and, CEO of Ovationz, what are some things that you're doing to gain cultural awareness so that you could be a better leader for all of us?
Yeah, one of the things is that it's a bold, who does this in the beginning of starting a company to think globally, but also think about, the makeup of your team and the thought processes that everybody will have coming in and being open to hearing different thought processes and different backgrounds. I always say that was one of my biggest educations growing up as a kid was that I was blessed to be able to travel around the world and meet people from all different backgrounds and learn that we're not so different as we think, but we do have specialties and different things that make us unique that help when you start to build a company. And so for me, one of the biggest things is having that input. So I've been a athlete and coach, and the biggest thing when you're an athlete on a team, especially, is knowing your job and your role and respecting everybody's role and respecting the differences. Because if we were all the same, then we all just go in that same one path. And so having thinking out of the box, I think that's one of the major things that I want to bring to the table is all my global experience of meeting dignitaries or meeting executives from across the world and having that same kind of thing is that we know that our value is that we all want to be better.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, you hit so many things that resonate with me, as you know, my parents are immigrants from India. and I was born in Chicago. And so I've always sort of walked that line between the Indian and the American culture, and having to see it from both perspectives. It was difficult growing up because, my parents expected me to, within the four walls of our home, they were raising me as being traditionally Indian. And then you come outside of your house and now you're supposed to be part of the American society. So, I struggled, Ray, when I was growing up. It's one of the things that makes me so culturally aware, is because I know what it felt like to feel like an outsider, like you didn't belong to either one of the two cultures. And that's why I'm hypersensitive about this topic, because, especially when we're inviting people to the journey and we're saying we welcome diversity of thought, we welcome diversity, we have to make sure that we set up the support and the resources for the people within the organization so they can continue to do the work to become culturally aware. So it's one of those things that's ongoing. It's not like you go to one training workshop. We both are public speakers and we speak on these topics all the time. And I tell this to people, it's not, I wish I was that good that you came into my workshop and now you know everything you have to know about being culturally aware. It's just not that simple, right? It's an ongoing process.
It's a process. Yeah, process. And so I'm gonna flip it on you. Like, what is your biggest influence that turns you to think about culture, to think about being a leader in that space?
Yeah, honestly, for me, it's been something I've faced in my life. I was on the receiving end of discrimination and harassment growing up. And so that always sort of brought out that social justice part of me, that I wanted to do more. I wanted to address these issues systemically. And so that's why I went to law school. That was one way that I thought I could make a real difference. And I did that for a number of years, right? I was a defense attorney. I represented leaders my whole career. So I've seen it, prejudice and lack of cultural awareness, I would say, from both sides of the spectrum. And so I wanted to do more, and then I've seen so many situations where there were, and this was a question I was going to ask you too, where there was a lack of that cultural awareness. And, we need to talk about that, because we say we want to change things, but that also means that we have to acknowledge what it feels like when you're on the other side. So can you think of an example or two where maybe you personally encountered a lack of cultural awareness, where, and how did that make you feel, Ray, when you were on that receiving side, where you showed up and, people didn't see you for who you were because of your cultural identity?
Yeah. Oh man. I've had so many of those, so many of those awakening moments. And I guess one of the biggest ones was one of my earliest moments. And I grew up to two teenage parents in Palmer Park, Maryland, and we didn't have much in it, but everybody in my neighborhood looked like me. And then as we started to get a little more fame and grow, we moved to different areas where no one looked like me. And so my first day, I think it was seventh grade, going to school, I went to middle school and no one in the school looked like me. All of our conversations were different. And it was like I was I guess a pariah kind of. Even though I came from a famous family at that point in time, I was still looked upon like, hey, like, who are you? Like, where did you come from? Like, why is your skin that way? And it was shocking to me to see that, because I had never really felt it in my neighborhood. But I knew it came from a place of not understanding, but it was a curiosity to them to see something different. And sometimes we have to educate people, and you have to rip the Band-Aid off, because we're so reactive nowadays. Instead of just saying, okay, this is something that we actually want to tackle. We're always putting a Band-Aid on it. But now we have to rip the Band-Aid off, have those tough conversations, and show the backgrounds and our diversity makes us unique and makes us stronger.
Wow. Yes. Yes. And as you were talking, this is the thing, when you start communicating and you start having conversations with other people about when they've experienced the lack of cultural awareness, you realize that you're not alone. A lot of us have experienced the same feeling. In my second TEDx talk, the situation that I talk about, and the video, should be coming out any day now. But the situation I talk about there, Ray, was when there was a history class that I had when I was in elementary school. And, there was a session there on India. And I remember sitting there, and I always get goosebumps whenever I tell this story, But like I remember sitting there in that classroom, and the only thing in the entire textbook that was positive about India was a picture of the Taj Mahal. That was it.
Don't get me started on textbooks. So a lot to unpack there.
I know. Yes. And it just, I mean, that was like one of the first times where I felt all alone in a classroom of people, and that's kind of the story that I tell in that talk. But so let's get a little bit deeper about what are we doing at the studio to make sure that we foster healthy sort of intercultural relationships. What are some of the things that you're doing as a leader? What are some of the things you're doing with your teams? What are some advice that you have for me to make sure that I continue to develop our strategy for Nobody Studios?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I think the one biggest thing is just being open and having the conversations, to listening to each other, to not making these stereotypes or assumptions of who a person is. Because we all have not just our cultural background, but also our life backgrounds. Our stories, kind of define us and who we are as people. So when you learn to accept that and have these conversations, it makes things a lot easier. We hear each other out. It's open dialogue. My door's always open for anybody on my team. I like to hear about people's backgrounds and stories because it helps me be a better manager and a better leader, to understand where they came from. Sometimes you may get comments from people that may be disturbing to you, but you may not know their backstory of why they have this thought process. And I think when we open and we have that conversation, and we want to know not just about what the person can do, but why they do it and who they are. I think that's going to make us better as we grow and be open and honest with each other. So that's one of the biggest things, and I guess the biggest advice is just being open to the conversation.
Absolutely. And, you bring up a distinction I want to make for people. There's what I picked up on what you were saying, Ray, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's an aspect to cultural awareness that involves us paying attention to other people's different cultures, different values and perceptions, being sensitive to them and trying to do our best to understand and listen to them. Right. And then there's the other side too, that I think a lot of people forget, is that it also means we have to pay attention to how aspects of our own culture, our own identity shape our own beliefs, unconscious biases and behaviors. It has to be an inward as well as an outward thing. So thank you for clarifying that. And I love what you said, about making sure you have good communication with your teams, being open, having these conversations, making yourself available. I mean, I've talked to several members of your team. I know them well and interacted with them. And they're always telling me that you're there, you're available, you're a resource. You come into these meetings with a positive energy. I mean, I've never once heard anybody say they didn't feel like they can approach you, and I hear a lot of what happens at Nobody Studios. So good for you. Thanks for continuing to lead the way at Nobody Studios. So how can people get involved? I mean, obviously, everybody that's watching this knows that we are doing everything we can to ensure that we create an inclusive workplace for all different cultures, all kinds of different diversity. What are the ways that people can bring their ideas, their talent, their influence to both Nobody Studios as well as Ovationz, right?
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is that we're actively looking for people to grow the team and be better. Where we have our crowdfunding going on, allowing more people to be involved, than ever into the venture world. To each company that we're building to be able to have a part of that company. For another standpoint is that since we're building companies at such a rapid pace and growing quickly, we need talent. We need the people, and we want people from all different backgrounds who can add value to what we're doing. Because the companies that we're talking about, the things that we want to build, is being impactful. And that's one of the major things with the studio. We also talked about having impactful companies. So we're making a difference, not just in showing a cultural willingness to bring in anybody from any background, but also that we're creating something that's going to be bigger than just what the average company is. That we want to create impactful companies that make a difference in the world. So bring your talent, bring your checkbook, bring your energy, bring your diversity of thought, everything. And so it's amazing that we're doing this and growing at such a rapid pace. So we're open door. we're open doors. So transparent to the core. So I love it.
Absolutely. And I just want to add on for everybody, we're one of the first venture studios to do an equity crowdfunding campaign. This is another example of how we are providing access to people of all different kinds of diversity, another opportunity to be an investor in the studio. I mean, for me, that was a major reason why I joined the studio, because I've had to work really hard for everything that I have right now, and I didn't have $100,000 sitting in my bank account so I can invest and be an investor in a startup. And at our studio, we're offering people for as little as $100 an opportunity to be an investor, to support us, to bring your talents, to bring your ideas. So go to Republic and invest in our equity crowdfunding campaign. That'll give you an opportunity to not only be an investor. I mean, I look at that as just a side benefit, but more importantly, you become part of the nobody crowd. So you're going to help us shape our culture. You're going to be part of helping us build these companies by giving us your feedback. Another one of our core values is that we're crowd infused. So we really are doing this very strategically to bring the diversity into our nobody crowd, right, Ray? Is there anything else you want to add about our equity crowdfunding campaign, or anything else that we're doing to sort of intentionally, strategically bring diversity into our studio?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's just so unique in having an equity crowdfunding for a venture studio. So normally the whole process is to bring in just a few people, shut everybody else out, and let the few people enjoy the benefits of what's going on. But for working with Republic to build this and grow the crowdfunding, we've raised a really good deal of money already, and it's still, I think we have about 20 days left in the campaign. So it's very exciting to build this and have people from all different backgrounds across the world that say, here, I'm an investor. I'm a venture investor, and I'm part of the studio, and I'm a part of growing these companies together.
Yeah. And I mean, talk about cultural diversity, right? Like, I was listening to one of the live series that Mark McNally did, and that's our chief nobody, with, I think it was Barry. And he said something like, there's going to be a day that he anticipates that's not too far away, right? Where there's going to be a girl in India playing on her iPad that's going to submit an idea to our Idea Lab to solve a problem that he doesn't know anything about, right? And that's the beauty of this, building our nobody crowd, is that there's going to be problems that are happening in all different parts of the world that we don't know about, and we understand that we don't know about it. And so that's why we're opening this up again for people to join our journey, so that they can help us learn about what are some of the problems that need to be addressed, and that we can build companies to help address those. Because a huge part of why we're doing the equity crowdfunding campaign and why we're building these companies is to make a difference, a positive difference in this world, right? And so join the journey. And this is a beautiful thing, is, as Ray was saying, you can kind of decide how you want to do that. You can contribute capital, your ideas, your talents, and so make sure you check out nobodystudios.com to learn more about how you can get involved. And any last words, Ray, before we end our broadcast for today?
No, I just love it, and everything that you do, Sejal, and I appreciate you. And the big thing is just talking about great ideas can come from anywhere. And so as we embrace culture, as we embrace what we're doing, I'm just looking forward to seeing the journey as we go forward. And so I'm so excited about where we are, where we're headed, and that you can be a nobody and end up being a somebody.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, Ray. I know you're super busy. I appreciate you sharing your perspectives and your stories. I think the more that we all talk about this stuff, it just lets people know who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. And so thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We'll see you next time. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye, Ray.